All right, it is time now to check in with our business editor, Ticky Fullerton. Ticky, very good afternoon to you. There's such choppy waters on the global trade front at the moment. I mean, only yesterday we heard Steve Mnuchin saying, yeah, we are set to have talks with the Chinese in a couple of weeks. Donald Trump then fronts up at the UN and blasts China on a whole range of fronts, as we just saw earlier.
Totally.
How's all this playing out on the local market?
Well, I think you've nailed it, David, there, because that's exactly what the market was focused on. It was off at the close today, 0.57% at now 6,710. Very much focused, not so much on the Trump impeachment prospects or even Brexit or Hong Kong, but on this trade issue. And indeed, oil is down quite significantly, down overnight and down again today on the prospects of a sort of reduced China in terms of manufacturing, etc. So very much delivered sort of negative news for the market. The other thing, of course, the market was a little bit focused on is what Philip Lowe at the RBA will be doing next Tuesday as far as rates are concerned. Now, there was an expectation, quite a strong expectation, 76% of the market thought that there would be a drop. Now, everybody chuffed off to Armadale overnight to see Philip Lowe talk, and he gave a hugely long question and answer session as well. But he didn't really indicate that he was firmly going to cut on Tuesday. So that expectation's gone down from 76 to about 70% now. And he's talked,
okay.
yeah. So I mean, it's still odds on, and all the big four banks think that the RBA will cut. But there's still this expectation that there's Philip Lowe saying, well, look, we've got to look at what the central banks are doing around the world in terms of reducing
yeah, what did you think of that
rates.
argument, Ticky? I thought that was interesting because we haven't necessarily been dragged down by what other central banks are doing before. But he was arguing last night, well, they're doing it, that might mean we have to, right?
Yeah,
what did you think of that argument?
He says it does affect our dollar, you see, and that is, I mean, that's one of the things he is focusing on to try and keep our dollar low so that we've got more opportunity there in terms of exports and that sort of thing, to try and crank up the economy. He's always looking for ways to crank up the economy and to get his wages increased. He did speak again about this idea we're in a sort of, a gentle spot at the moment, possibly a bit disappointed in the year to June growth numbers that recently came through. But he's talking about this gentle spot that we might be in, and it could be okay towards next year, but just how much growth we're going to get and how much it goes back towards trend will depend, he says. So he is playing a little bit of a waiting game. It'd be interesting to see whether he does cut on next month or whether it's a Melbourne Cup cut. Interestingly, the RBNZ as well left rates on hold today, rather than, they had that big double cut just a month or so ago, but they left them on hold today, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and Ticky is our resident Brexit expert. What have you made of what's now happened with this Supreme Court ruling? Parliament will now sit. What does that mean?
Oh, look, there's the most unholy mess this week, isn't there, really? I think that this unanimous court decision and Boris's that spider brooch on Baroness Hales, the president of the court, ruling, this unanimous ruling that proroguing is not allowed, and that in fact Boris Johnson actually misled the Queen. The Speaker's being called back. Boris is going back to London early now. The Tory party have their conference up in Manchester this coming weekend, and there's threats from the opposition that they'll force the Tory party to actually have to all the politicians have to come back to vote in Parliament in London through their party conference. I mean, there's a real lot of bitterness there, but there are still a few things that have to continue to happen. Apparently, the Queen's speech is still going to be on October the 14th, which case Boris Johnson is going to have to prorogue Parliament. How long will that be for? And will the courts move again? And how will that work? He still says he's going to try and deliver Brexit by October the 31st. But if he doesn't get this deal from Brussels, then the law as it stands at the moment is going to force him to delay. He's going to die in a ditch. I mean, this has still got a long way to play out, David, notwithstanding this quite alarming unanimous court decision against Boris Johnson from the Tory party point of view.
All right. Well, a lot of, as Donald Rumsfeld would say, a lot of known unknowns and unknown unknowns there. Ticky, thank you very much for the update. We'll catch up with you soon.
Yes, but Boris, I might tell you. I was going to say I might tell you. Donald Trump said it's just an ordinary day in the office, which I thought was quite amusing for Boris Johnson.